The vast chamber of the Galactic Council hummed with activity. Alien representatives from over 200 species filled the tiered seating, their varied forms creating a living mosaic of evolution across the stars. At the center, the High Council of Five studied the holographic display with mild curiosity. "Another spacefaring species?" asked Counselor Drav, his blue scales shimmering under the chamber lights. "How quaint." The intelligence officer nodded. "Yes, Counselor. We detected their vessels 3 cycles ago near the outer rim. 7 ships in total." 7. Counselor Pell laughed, her multiple eyes blinking in sequence. Most primitive species send at least 30 on their first deep space mission. The hologram shifted, showing small spacecraft with simple designs compared to the elegant vessels of established council races. Basic propulsion systems, rudimentary weapons, and unremarkable shielding technology. "They call themselves humans," the intelligence officer continued, "from a planet called Earth. Our scans show their technology is at least 200 years behind Council standards." High Counselor Mech waved a dismissive tendril. "Hardly worth our attention. File them under developing species and assign a standard observation team." "What shall we call their fleet designation in our records?" asked the officer. Counselor Drav smirked. "Given their pathetic numbers and size, let's classify them as the Tiny Fleet. It seems fitting." The council chamber filled with polite laughter as the members agreed. Little did they know their mockery would soon return to haunt them. Meanwhile, aboard the human exploration vessel Defiant, Captain James Miller walked the bridge with a confident stride. Earth's finest ship represented humanity's greatest achievement, the culmination of decades of scientific breakthroughs and engineering marvels. "Status report, Officer Reed," he called to his second-in-command. Reed looked up from her console. "All systems normal, Captain. We've completed our survey of the 4th planet. No signs of life, but plenty of valuable minerals." Miller nodded, gazing at the view screen showing the 6 other ships in their exploration fleet. The Pathfinder, Discovery, Horizon, Venture, Pioneer, and Seeker, each a marvel of human ingenuity. Together, they represented humanity's first serious push into deep space. "Any unusual readings on long-range scanners?" Miller asked. "Nothing significant," Reed replied, though her brow furrowed slightly. "There was a brief energy spike yesterday, almost like we were being scanned, but it vanished before I could pinpoint it." Miller frowned. The mission briefing had classified this sector as unexplored. "Keep monitoring. If anything changes, I want to know immediately." "Yes, sir." What neither Miller nor his crew realized was that alien eyes were indeed watching. The Council's observation vessel, cloaked from human detection, had been following them for days. The alien observers recorded everything, filing reports that reinforced the Council's dismissive attitude. "They don't even have proper faster-than-light communications," reported Observer Trell to the Council Committee. "Their ships must physically travel to communicate with their homeworld." "Fascinating," yawned Counselor Pell. "Such primitive beings." "Should we establish contact?" asked a junior counselor. "Our protocols suggest diplomatic engagement with new spacefaring races." High Counselor Mech considered this briefly. "Yes, send a diplomatic vessel. Let's welcome them to the galactic community." His voice dropped slightly. "And inform them of their proper place in it." The committee nodded in agreement. First contact would proceed, but not as equals. The tiny fleet would be offered protection and guidance in exchange for resources, territory, and submission to Council authority. It was the standard arrangement for minor species. "Prepare the diplomatic team," ordered Mech. "This should be simple and quick." As the meeting concluded, not one council member considered an alternative outcome. Their arrogance blinded them to a fundamental truth about the humans they were about to meet. Earth's exploration fleet represented just a tiny fraction of humanity's true capabilities. The wheels of fate had begun to turn, and the Council's greatest mistake was already in motion. The Council's diplomatic vessel, the Enlightenment, dwarfed the human ships, nearly 10 times the size of the Defiant. Its sleek hull gleamed with an iridescent sheen that changed colors as it moved through space. Captain Miller watched from the bridge as the massive alien ship approached. "That's not what I expected for first contact," he said quietly. Officer Reed nodded. "Sir, they're hailing us." "Put them through," Miller ordered, straightening his uniform. The view screen flickered to life, revealing 3 alien beings. The central figure had grayish skin with 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern. When it spoke, a translation device converted its clicks and whistles into English. "Greetings, humans. I am Ambassador Krell of the Galactic Council. We welcome your modest expedition to this region of space." Miller stepped forward. "I'm Captain James Miller of Earth's exploratory vessel Defiant. We come in peace and friendship." Ambassador Krell's upper eyes narrowed slightly. "Yes, we assumed as much. Your tiny fleet could hardly pose any threat." Ambassador Drake, Earth's diplomatic representative, joined Miller on screen. "We're honored to make first contact with your civilization. Earth would welcome opening diplomatic relations." "Of course," Krell replied with what might have been a smile. "The Council graciously extends protection to all developing species. We've prepared a standard treaty outlining the terms of your admission as a protectorate." Drake frowned. "Protectorate? We were hoping for recognition as an independent member." This caused a ripple of what sounded like laughter among the aliens. Krell's tone became patronizing. "Let's be realistic. Your civilization has barely left its home system. You have 7 small ships. The Council has millions. We control thousands of worlds." Miller felt his face grow hot, but maintained his composure. "Perhaps we could discuss terms that recognize our sovereignty while establishing friendly relations." "The terms are not negotiable," Krell replied coldly. "The Council expects your compliance. In exchange for protection and limited access to Council technology, Earth will provide resource tributes and territorial concessions." Drake's diplomatic smile vanished. "Ambassador Krell, with all due respect, we cannot accept terms that treat Earth as a subject world." "Then you lack wisdom," Krell said. "We will give you 3 of your Earth days to reconsider. The Council's patience is limited." The transmission ended abruptly. In the communications room of the Defiant, Tech Specialist Thompson worked frantically at his console. "Captain, you need to see this," he called as Miller entered. "During the transmission, I managed to access some unsecured data packets from their ship." "That doesn't sound legal," Miller said with a raised eyebrow. "Their security was surprisingly weak," Thompson shrugged. "They probably didn't think we had the capability." The screen displayed translated alien text. "Report on human engagement. The tiny fleet representative is Sajo unexpected or resistance. Recommend preparing minimal military responses if diplomacy fails." "They've been calling us the tiny fleet?" Miller asked, his jaw tightening. "It gets worse," Thompson said, pulling up another file. "According to their records, they think these 7 ships represent Earth's entire space force." Miller and Drake exchanged looks. Earth's Space Defense Force comprised over 200 combat-ready vessels, with another 100 in reserve. These 7 exploration ships were never intended for military engagement. "They have no idea," Drake whispered. "And that's our advantage," Miller replied. "Send an emergency burst transmission to Admiral Wilson. She needs to know what we're dealing with." Back on Earth, Admiral Wilson reviewed the transmission with growing concern. The Council's dismissive attitude and demands were troubling. She called an emergency meeting of Earth's Defense Council. "They've underestimated us," she explained to the assembled leaders. "They think our exploratory fleet is all we have." "Should we correct their mistake?" asked General Hayes. Admiral Wilson shook her head. "Not yet. Let's see how this plays out. But quietly prepare the Second Fleet for deployment. If diplomacy fails, we'll show them exactly what humans are capable of. As the meeting adjourned, Wilson looked at the star map marking the Defiant's position. The Council had made a dangerous error in judgment, one that might soon lead to the biggest surprise in their long history. 3 days passed with uncomfortable silence. Aboard the Council ship Enlightenment, Ambassador Krell paced impatiently. "The humans have not responded to our terms," he reported to the Council via secure channel. "They request more time for consideration." High Counselor Mech's holographic image flickered with annoyance. "They stall. These tactics are common among primitive species who overestimate their importance." "What would you recommend, High Counselor?" Krell asked. "A demonstration seems appropriate," Mech replied coldly. "Nothing excessive, just enough to show them the futility of resistance." Krell nodded. "I will coordinate with Commander Vex." The science vessel Horizon drifted peacefully at the edge of a gas giant's ring system. Its crew collected samples of the unique crystal formations embedded in the icy rings. Dr. Adams watched the data flow in with satisfaction. "These readings are remarkable," she said to her team. "The crystalline structures contain elements we've never." Warning lights flashed across the bridge as alarms blared. "Multiple ships approaching," called the sensor operator. "Not ours. Alien vessels, 3 of them." On the view screen, sleek Council attack ships emerged from behind the planet's largest moon. Their weapons systems glowed with energy. "This is Council Enforcement Squadron Delta," came a harsh voice over the comms. "Your vessel is in violation of Council space. Power down immediately." The captain of the Horizon, a veteran explorer named Martinez, responded calmly. "This is Captain Martinez of Earth Vessel Horizon. We received no notification that this area was restricted. We are engaged in peaceful scientific research." "Your ignorance is not our concern," the alien commander replied. "Power down now, or we will disable your vessel." Martinez signaled for emergency protocols. "All hands, secure stations. Communications, send distress signal to the Defiant." The 3 Council ships spread out in an attack formation. The lead vessel fired a warning shot that passed dangerously close to the Horizon's port side. "Last warning, humans." Captain Miller was reviewing reports when the emergency signal came through. "Horizon under attack. Requesting immediate assistance." "Battle stations," Miller ordered. "Set course for the Horizon's location, maximum speed. Alert all fleet vessels in range." The Defiant's engines roared to life as the ship accelerated toward the conflict. Within minutes, 2 other human ships, the Pathfinder and Venture, confirmed they were also en route. "Time to intercept," Miller demanded. 8 minutes, sir," Officer Reed replied. Miller's jaw tightened. That might be too long. Back at the gas giant, the Council ships moved in for the kill. The Horizon, designed for science rather than combat, had only basic defensive capabilities. "Target their propulsion systems," ordered the Council commander. "Disable them." The alien weapons charge aimed directly at the human vessel. Just as they prepared to fire, the space around them warped. In a flash of blue light, the Defiant appeared between the attackers and their prey. "This is Captain Miller of the Earth vessel Defiant." His voice boomed across all frequencies. "Stand down immediately." The Council commander laughed. "1 small ship against 3. You humans truly are delusional." "This is your only warning," Miller replied, his voice steady. The lead Council ship fired instead of responding. The energy beam streaked toward the Defiant. And then something unexpected happened. The human ship's defensive systems activated, creating a shimmering field that completely absorbed the attack. "Return fire," Miller ordered calmly. The Defiant's weapons weren't particularly large, but they were precisely aimed. Targeted pulses hit the lead Council ship's weapons systems, disabling them without destroying the vessel. "What technology is this?" the Council commander exclaimed in shock. Their defensive capabilities were not in our intelligence reports. Before the other Council ships could react, the Pathfinder and Venture arrived, taking flanking positions. "Your ships are surrounded," Miller announced. "Power down your weapons." Facing unexpected resistance and superior tactical positioning, the Council commander reluctantly complied. News of the skirmish spread quickly through Council space. Military leaders gathered in emergency session. "How did 7 primitive ships defeat our attack squadron?" demanded General Thorne, the Council's military commander. "Unknown, General," replied the intelligence officer. "Their technology appears more advanced than our initial assessment." General Thorne studied the battle recordings with growing concern. "These humans are not what they seem. Prepare a proper battle group. If they resist again, we will crush this tiny fleet once and for all." Little did the Council know that Admiral Wilson had already dispatched the Second Fleet, 30 state-of-the-art warships, toward the conflict zone. The tiny fleet was about to become much less tiny. The Council chambers erupted in chaos following the failed attack on the horizon. Representatives from dozens of species shouted over each other, while the High Council struggled to maintain order. "Silence," bellowed High Councilor Mech, his voice amplified throughout the chamber. "This minor setback changes nothing. The humans simply got lucky." Councilor Drav wasn't convinced. "Our intelligence was wrong about their defensive capabilities. What else might we have missed?" An aide rushed into the chamber and whispered urgently to General Thorne. The military commander's face darkened as he listened. "High Councilors," Thorne interrupted, "the Varian fleet has taken matters into their own hands. They've launched an attack on the human diplomatic outpost we established in neutral space." Councilor Pell's eyes widened. "Without authorization. The Varians are members of this council. Admiral Zox claims he's acting in the Council's best interest," Thorne replied grimly. "He's deployed 12 warships against the outpost." High Councilor Mech slammed his fist down. "Fool, he'll ruin everything." The human diplomatic outpost floated peacefully in space, a small station designed for meetings between species. Inside, 30 diplomats and staff worked to understand the complex political structure of the Galactic Council. Ambassador Drake sent another update, reported Liaison Officer Bell to the station director. "The Council is still refusing to recognize Earth as a sovereign power." Director White sighed. "Keep drafting alternative proposals. There must be a peaceful." Warning klaxons cut him off as emergency lights flashed throughout the station. "Multiple warships dropping out of faster-than-light travel," shouted the security chief. "They're Varian vessels. Weapons hot." The view screen showed a terrifying sight. A fleet of massive warships with distinctive red markings, the Varian attack force. They immediately established a blockade around the station. "This is Admiral Zox of the Varian Empire," boomed a harsh voice over the comms. "Your species has insulted the Council and rejected our generous offer of protection. Surrender your station or be destroyed." Director White responded quickly. "Admiral, there are 30 unarmed diplomats aboard this station. We've committed no hostile acts." "You have 5 minutes to surrender," Zox interrupted, cutting the transmission. White turned to his communications officer. "Send emergency signal to all human vessels. We need immediate evacuation." The Defiant was the closest ship to the diplomatic outpost. Captain Miller ordered maximum speed when the distress call came through, but they were still 15 minutes away. "Can we contact the Varians?" Miller asked. Officer Reed shook her head. "They're blocking all communications to the station." Miller's face hardened. "Then we need a plan. 12 warships against 1 explorer. Not great odds." "Sir," Reed said hesitantly, "long-range sensors are picking up something else. A large energy signature approaching from the direction of Earth space." Miller checked the readings and allowed himself a small smile. "It seems Admiral Wilson got my message." Admiral Zox was about to order the first strike against the diplomatic station when his sensor officer shouted in alarm. "Admiral, detecting a massive energy surge, multiple ships dropping out of FTL." "The humans?" Zox laughed. "Their 7 little ships are no match for." His words died in his throat as the sensor screen filled with new contacts. Not 7 ships, not even 20. One after another, sleek, powerful warships appeared in perfect formation. 30 advanced human vessels, each bristling with weapon systems that instantly locked onto the Varian fleet. "What is this?" Socks whispered. His answer came as a transmission cut through his ship's communications. "This is Admiral Wilson of the Earth Space Defense Force 2nd Fleet. You are threatening unarmed diplomats in neutral space. Stand down immediately or be fired upon." Across the Council monitoring stations, watchers stared in disbelief at the sensor readings. "Impossible," muttered an intelligence officer. "These aren't exploration vessels. These are dedicated warships, heavily armed and armored." General Thorne studied the tactical display with growing horror. Those 7 ships, they were never their military. They were just scouts. A junior officer approached timidly. "Sir, our long-range sensors are detecting more energy signatures, many more." "How many?" Thorne demanded. The officer swallowed hard. "Over 100 ships, sir, all on direct course to our position." The truth dawned on the Council at last. They hadn't been dealing with Earth's military fleet at all. The tiny fleet they had mocked was merely an advance exploration force. The real human armada was just arriving, and it was anything but tiny. "We've made a terrible mistake," Councillor Drav whispered as the screens filled with more and more human warships appearing from FTL. Admiral Zox stared at his tactical display in disbelief. What had begun as a simple intimidation mission against a defenseless diplomatic outpost had transformed into a potential disaster. 30 human warships held position against his 12 Varian vessels. "Orders, Admiral," his second-in-command asked nervously. Zox clenched his jaw. The Varian Empire had never backed down from a fight. "Maintain battle formation. These humans are bluffing. They wouldn't dare attack Council forces." Across space, aboard the EDS Intrepid, Admiral Wilson watched the Varian ships with a steady gaze. Behind her, the bridge crew worked with quiet efficiency. "The Varians aren't retreating," reported her tactical officer. "They're maintaining offensive posture." Wilson nodded. "Begin evacuation of the diplomatic station. Have the Defiant dock and extract our people." "And the Varian fleet?" "Give them one more chance," Wilson said. "Open a channel." The view screen flickered to life, showing Admiral Zox's stern face. "Admiral Zox, this is your final warning. Withdraw your forces from this neutral zone immediately." Zox sneered. "The Council does not recognize your authority in this sector, human. This is your last chance to surrender your ships and accept your proper place in the galactic order." Wilson's expression remained calm. "Very well." She cut the transmission and turned to her bridge crew. "Battle Plan Omega. Non-lethal targeting only. Disable their weapons and engines." Throughout the human fleet, ships moved with coordinated precision that shocked the watching Council observers. Instead of forming a traditional battle line, the human vessels split into 5 squadrons, each executing complex maneuvers that seemed chaotic at first glance. "What are they doing?" General Thorne asked, watching from the Council command center. The intelligence officer shook his head. "Unknown battle formation. It doesn't match any known tactics in our database." On the battlefield, Admiral Zox finally recognized the danger. Evasive maneuvers. Target the lead human vessel. Too late. The human squadrons had already encircled the Varian ships from all angles. What followed wasn't just a battle. It was a demonstration. Human ships darted between Varian vessels with impossible speed and coordination. Precision weapons fire disabled weapon systems and engines without destroying the ships themselves. When Varian vessels fired back, advanced human defensive systems absorbed or deflected the energy blasts with technology the Council had never seen before. "How are they predicting our attack patterns?" Sox shouted as another of his ships lost weapons capability. Within minutes, half the Varian fleet floated helplessly in space, their main systems offline. Admiral Zox watched in horror as 3 human ships approached his command vessel. "Sir, they've locked targeting systems on our bridge," his tactical officer reported, voice shaking. Direct hit would mean total loss of command crew. Zox's pride crumbled in the face of certain defeat. "Signal surrender," he ordered quietly. In the Council Command Center, General Thorne watched the battle's conclusion with stunned silence. "They defeated our 3rd most powerful fleet in less than 15 minutes, he whispered, without losing a single ship. The doors slid open as High Counselor Mech and the others entered. "Is it true?" Mech demanded. "The humans." "See for yourself," Thorne replied, gesturing to the tactical display. "The Varian fleet has surrendered. The human ships are now providing assistance to the disabled vessels." "And the main human fleet?" Counselor Pell asked. An officer approached with a data tablet. 128 warships have now arrived in the sector, High Counselor. Based on their formations and designations, we believe this represents approximately 60% of their total military capacity. Silence fell over the room as the implications sank in. "How did we misjudge them so badly?" Counselor Drav finally asked. General Thorne brought up archival footage of Earth. "Our intelligence focused on their technology level and ship count. We never considered their history." The display showed images of human conflicts throughout their history. "They've been fighting wars among themselves for thousands of years," Thorne explained. "Their entire history is a series of conflicts, alliances, and arms races. They've mastered the art of war in ways we never imagined, and we treated them like novices." High Counselor Mech stared at the images, then at the battle results. "Open communications with Admiral Wilson," he ordered. "The Council is ready to discuss terms." The tiny fleet had been a deception, not by human design, but by Council arrogance, and that mistake had revealed humanity as the newest and most formidable power in the galaxy. The grand meeting hall aboard the Council station, Harmony, had never felt so tense. Its circular design, meant to represent equality among species, now seemed to emphasize the power shift that had occurred. 5 human representatives sat on one side of the massive table, facing 15 council delegates across a divide that felt wider than mere space. Admiral Wilson sat center in her formal uniform, flanked by Captain Miller, Ambassador Drake, and 2 Earth military strategists. Opposite them, High Counselor Mech led the council delegation, his normally commanding presence diminished by recent events. "This emergency session of the Galactic Council is now in session," announced the neutral moderator, a member of an ancient species known for their impartiality. "We gather to address the conflict between Council forces and the human fleet." High Counselor Mech spoke first. "The Council deeply regrets the unauthorized actions of the Varian fleet. Admiral Zox acted without Council approval and has been removed from his position." Admiral Wilson's expression remained neutral. "The attack on our diplomatic outpost endangered 30 unarmed representatives. Under galactic law, as you define it, this constitutes an act of war." Murmurs spread through the Council delegation. Mech raised a hand to quiet them. "A regrettable misunderstanding," he offered. "Perhaps we can discuss reparations and—" "Misunderstanding," Captain Miller interrupted, earning a sharp look from Counselor Drav. "Your forces attacked our science vessel before the diplomatic incident. Your intelligence classified us as the tiny fleet and dismissed our civilization as primitive." Ambassador Drake placed a calming hand on Miller's arm before addressing the Council. "We have intercepted enough of your communications to understand how thoroughly you underestimated humanity. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was arrogance." The Council delegates shifted uncomfortably. Mech's expression hardened. "What do you want, humans?" he asked directly. Admiral Wilson slid a data tablet across the table. "Our terms are simple. Earth will be recognized as a sovereign power with full rights to explore, colonize, and trade within unclaimed systems. The protectorate status you attempted to force upon us is rejected completely." Mech reviewed the terms, his eyes widening at certain points. These demands are unprecedented for a newly discovered species. So was your unprovoked attack, Wilson replied evenly. As the council representatives huddled to discuss the terms, Captain Miller leaned toward Drake. "Do you think they'll agree?" he whispered. Drake nodded slightly. "They don't have much choice. Our fleet currently outmatches anything they can quickly assemble." The private council discussion grew heated. Several representatives gestured angrily toward the humans, while others appeared to argue for acceptance. Finally, Mech returned to the table. "The Council is prepared to recognize Earth as a sovereign entity," he announced stiffly. "However, we request modifications to your territorial claims in the Orion sector." Wilson shook her head. "Those terms are non-negotiable. The Orion sector contains the route back to Earth space. We will not compromise our security." Before Mech could respond, the door to the chamber slid open. 3 new alien delegates entered, representatives from the Tellarite, Pernari, and Vox confederacies, all council member species. "High Counselor," the Tellarite representative announced, "our governments wish to establish separate diplomatic relations with Earth, independent of council oversight." Shock rippled through the chamber. Member species breaking ranks was almost unheard of in council history. "This is irregular," Mech protested. "All diplomatic relations should be coordinated through. The council's military failure has forced us to reconsider our options," the Brunari delegate interrupted. "The humans have proven themselves worthy allies." Admiral Wilson maintained her composure, but Ambassador Drake allowed himself a small smile. The balance of power was shifting visibly. High Counselor Mech stared at the table for a long moment before looking up at Wilson. "It seems we have little choice," he said finally. "The Council accepts your terms without modification." As Mech pressed his thumb to the treaty document, officially recognizing Earth as a sovereign power, Captain Miller reflected on how quickly everything had changed. Just weeks ago, they had been a simple exploration fleet, discovering new worlds. Now they were recognized as one of the most powerful forces in the galaxy. "The tiny fleet," he whispered to himself, finding bitter irony in the nickname that had once been meant as an insult. The greatest miscalculation in Council history was now complete, and a new galactic order had begun. 6 months after the confrontation that changed the balance of power, the galactic landscape looked remarkably different. The central plaza on Nexus Station, the new joint human-alien diplomatic hub, bustled with activity. Representatives from dozens of species mingled freely, conducting trade negotiations and forming alliances that would have been unthinkable under the old Council regime. Admiral Wilson, now promoted to Fleet Admiral, stood by the large viewport overlooking the bustling spaceport. She watched as human vessels docked alongside alien ships in peaceful cooperation. "Quite a change from our first encounter," remarked a familiar voice. Wilson turned to see Captain Miller approaching, his uniform now bearing the insignia of a newly formed joint security force. "James," she greeted him warmly. "How does it feel to be the most famous captain in Earth's fleet?" Miller smiled slightly. "Fame was never my goal. I'm just glad we avoided a prolonged conflict. The Council never expected us to be reasonable after our victory," Wilson said. "They were prepared for demands of territory, resources, even subjugation of their worlds." "They judged us by their own standards," Miller replied. "Another miscalculation." Below them, in the docking bay, the original 7 ships of the exploration fleet, the tiny fleet that had started everything, were being prepared for a special ceremony. Each had been retrofitted and upgraded, ready to lead new joint exploration missions into uncharted space. "Your new assignment came through," Wilson said. "The Defiant will lead the first joint human Tellarite expedition to the Cygnus region." Miller nodded. "The Tellarites have good scientists, and they're much more respectful now that they've seen what humans can do." The station's announcement system chimed softly. "Admiral Wilson and Captain Miller, your presence is requested in the Grand Hall for the Treaty Summit." The Grand Hall of Nexus Station had been designed to impress. Its soaring ceiling displayed a real-time holographic map of known space, with Earth prominently marked alongside the territories of former Council worlds. At the center stood a large circular table with representatives from 20 major species. As Wilson and Miller entered, all eyes turned to them. The humans nodded respectfully and took their designated seats. Across from them sat the new council leadership. The old guard had been replaced following their disastrous handling of the human situation. The new High Speaker, a Bernari named Lin, rose to address the gathering. "This historic summit marks a new era of cooperation," she announced. "The revised Galactic Charter, with equal representation for all spacefaring species, will ensure peace and prosperity for generations to come." Ambassador Drake, now Earth's galactic representative, spoke next. "Humanity comes to this table not as conquerors, but as partners. We bring our strengths, including our military experience, as a shield for peaceful species, not as a threat." The former High Counselor Mech, now serving in a reduced capacity, watched the proceedings with grudging respect. After the assembly adjourned, he approached Miller privately. "I must admit, Captain, we completely misunderstood your species," Mech said quietly. "We thought your military prowess would make you dangerous conquerors." Miller studied the alien thoughtfully. "Humans learned long ago that true strength lies in building alliances, not empires. Our history is filled with wars, yes, but also with the wisdom gained from them." Mech nodded slowly. "The tiny fleet exhibit opens in our central museum tomorrow, a reminder of our greatest error in judgment." Miller smiled. "I'll be there. Some lessons should never be forgotten." Later that evening, as the station's lighting dimmed to simulate night, a small group gathered in Observatory Deck 3. Wilson, Miller, Drake, and Reed shared drinks while gazing at the stars. "A message from Earth," Reed announced, checking her communications device. "The Third Fleet has successfully established the new joint defense perimeter with the Vox Confederacy." Wilson nodded with satisfaction. "Record time. The cooperation is working better than expected." Ambassador Drake raised his glass. "To new beginnings." As they toasted, a station controller interrupted politely. "Excuse me, Admiral. We've detected an unknown vessel approaching from the outer rim. Non-council design. They're requesting first contact protocols." The humans exchanged knowing glances as Miller smiled. "Tell them we'll handle this one." Wilson nodded. "And make sure they understand one thing from the start." "What's that, Admiral?" asked the controller. "Never judge a species by the size of their fleet."